Welcome back to 101 East, where our topic today is the legacy of unexploded ordnance. Still with us are Ray McGrath, John Pike and Poi Kia. Ray McGrath, let me come to you first. Just before the break, John Pike was arguing that this is a problem that is not going to go away because the use of the kind of munitions that we've been talking about is an essential part of modern warfare. Did you find his arguments convincing?
No, not at all. The fact is that, first of all, the military utility of cluster munitions has never been proven. In Laos, for instance, they were used largely to close down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. For 9 years, Laos was bombed, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail got bigger every year. They just don't work. Secondly, I'd have to say that I'm surprised at his claims that now we're going to find new fuses, new systems that are going to make these weapons work. You know, we've had nearly half a century to make the cluster submunition operate as designed. We have never managed to do that. It's always failed. And I'd point out that the very latest of these weapons used in large numbers, the Blue 97B, combined effects munition, which has been used in Iraq, which is used in Afghanistan. We were promised the same with this. This was a smart piece of weaponry. Right.
But Ray, I mean, what you're doing here is you're talking in almost the same terms that John was a moment ago. I mean, we're suddenly talking technicalities. John, is the conversation we're having here about whether we should be designing better weapons or whether we should be considering exactly what it is that we're doing with weapons full stop? I mean, you're being somewhat dispassionate here. Don't you think there should be an element of humanity coming into this whole conversation?
Well, I think that there is a very strong element of humanity here because against some types of targets, under some circumstances, these cluster munitions are the most proportionate and discriminate weapon that's available. You could use a regular unitary munition, but that's going to spread shrapnel over a much larger area and is going to endanger innocent bystanders in a way that a cluster bomb isn't. The unavoidable reality, though, is that war is ultimately about killing people, and unfortunately, war also entails killing innocent people, sometimes decades after the war has ended.
We'll get onto that.
One of the reasons that war is
terrible. We'll get
terrible.
onto that question in just a second, but let me come to Poi Kia. Kia, we're standing here talking about the efficacy of weaponry from where you sit and from where you live. Does it make any difference to you whether a weapon works or not, or are you more concerned with the damage that it's doing right now?
Well, the problem here, like I said earlier, Cambodia got impact from the war in Vietnam, and following that, Cambodia had faced another civil war for a long time, almost 3 decades, and until it finally ended in 1998. And the problem today is a lot of landmines, like I said, landmines and UXO, and again with the weapons scattered around the country. And the people keep asking, why, what happened, why these kind of explosives and arms continue to placed under the ground or in Cambodia. And the fact is that still people suffer, and this is what we consider that because of the war, because of the fighting, that the people suffer a lot.
Now, John,
and suffer not only for a short period. Yeah.
John, I mean, you're sitting here listening to Poi Kia and his experiences, and certainly you have a point to make in saying that war is an ugly and dirty business. But you know, can you say in the same breath that, well, we have to accept civilian casualties, and I guess more significantly that we have to accept civilian casualties 30 years after the war has ended, with a prospect of it going on indefinitely? Surely there is a problem here.
Well, no, I don't think that it's an acceptable part of the business, but it's a fact, a reality of the business, that the difference between war and peace is that in peacetime we think that the guilty are punished and the innocent are not, and we understand that in war, innocent people are going to suffer. It's not acceptable, but it's a reality of warfare. I don't think that it is acceptable for this to go on indefinitely, and I think that that's the reason that you have these international humanitarian demining efforts, and that's the reason the United States has been supporting it.
Well,
should the United States be spending more? Maybe they should.
Let me go to you, Ray. I mean, the United States is supporting it more than any other country in the world. That much is true, but that's still a very small proportion of the money that was spent in actually causing the problem in the first place. What should be done here?
What should be done is, first of all, we accept that sometimes wars are going to happen, and that means weapons are going to be used. But there are laws that are widely accepted for what you can do in a war. One is you can't use indiscriminate weapons. Secondly, you can't use weapons which have a completely unbalanced impact. And as we've seen, having things that are left destroying the peace after the war is finished are quite clearly not acceptable. So we've got to do the same with cluster munitions, as has been done with anti-personnel mines. We have to get rid of them. And we have that process started. There are many countries who agree. And what we need to do is to make sure that everybody steps back and forgets their national interests in this and begins to think, it's not just us that may use these. If we keep this kind of weapon legal, they're going to be used by many countries in the future. We have an opportunity to stop them being used right now.
Let's talk then about the problem of using these particular kinds of weapons. As Ray pointed out, we've had bans on things like landmines, on things like napalm. Why is it not possible to be able to draw a humanitarian line that will rule out certain weapons, like cluster munitions, whose casualty rate of civilians is so unacceptably high?
Well, in the case of napalm, it has not been banned. It's simply been banned against using it against cities. Napalm, like cluster munitions, are in some instances against some types of target, is simply going to be the most effective, the most discriminate, the most proportionate weapon of choice. And that's why the U.S. military continues to use napalm, and that's why the U.S. military continues to use cluster bombs. Unlike landmines, which are basically left where they're not under direct control, cluster bombs are used against specific targets at a specific time. They have effects that are limited in space. A 2,000-pound bomb is going to be sending shrapnel thousands of feet. Cluster bombs have a much smaller area of effect, and against some targets, that's going to be the weapon of choice. And the U.S. military is going to continue to use them.
Ray, we know that Lebanon is now littered with this material. 30 years from now, are we going to be looking at Lebanon and still talking about it? Are we going to be talking about Iraq and Afghanistan in the same way now that we're talking about Laos?
Yes, if we carry on with this kind of argument that that one weapon is better than another, what John is saying is, yes, it's better than another weapon, perhaps from a purely military point of view, but it's nonetheless already illegal to use in the long-term impact it has and the indiscriminate impact it has when it's used. 4 million, estimated 4 million submunitions fired into southern Lebanon last year. Probably 20% of them have failed to explode as designed. They're blowing people up. We have another Laos beginning there. The same problem in Iraq that we used there, the same problem in Afghanistan. Afghanistan, which was one of the most heavily mined countries in the world, now also has a cluster submunition problem. And yet those submunitions were dropped as part of what was termed a humanitarian intervention. How is that helping the people there? This is quite clearly an unacceptable weapon.
Okay, we're out of time, gentlemen. I just want to give a final quick word to Poi Kia. Do you have hope that one day the children in Cambodia will be able to walk in the fields around Pai Lin and not fear for their lives?
Yes, based on what the government has committed and the pledge from the international community, Cambodia believes that we will be able to clear all landmines and in 10 years' time, and UXO in another 20 years. However, one more thing I would like to stress right now, the UXO is more dangerous than landmines, because UXO is scattered around the country, while landmine basically just located only in the northwest part of Cambodia, basically along the Cambodia-Thai border.
Gentlemen, thank you all very much indeed for talking to us today. My thanks to all our guests, Ray McGrath, John Pike and Poi Kia. And from us here at 101 East, it's bye-bye until next time.